travel. And after a couple months or close to a year of me not being in school, my father offered me an offer that I couldn't refuse. He basically said, listen, Shloime, we want you to go back to a yeshiva, to a religious high school, and we will give you a paid ticket anywhere in the world if you agree to go to this high school for 10 days. So basically he wanted to send me to Israel to try this new yeshiva. And he said, if you go through 10 days over there, I will give you a paid ticket anywhere in the world. And I thought to myself, this is great. I'm going to go to Israel. I'd never been there before. I always wanted to travel. I'll put up with 10 days at this yeshiva. And then as soon as I'm done, I'll be out of here and I'll be, living the life. So we booked the ticket to Israel. I went to this yeshiva and I stayed for 3 years. It was very interesting, but basically this school, this yeshiva had karate classes, they had music classes, they had a woodworking shop, and I found my place within Hasidic Orthodox Judaism. I until then I had felt like I wasn't fitting in so well, and all of a sudden I was in this school where they were willing to teach other things than Torah, and I love Torah, but I was a curious teenager, and at that point I wasn't into learning so much. I wanted to do other things that I thought were more exciting, and when I had it all in one package, I really was able to find myself. So I'm studying in Israel. I would come to the United States every couple of months to visit family. Every time I came to the United States or Canada, I would have a stopover in Europe, and I would make a point to go out of the airport on these stopovers. So just through that alone, I got to see almost 20 countries in Europe. And when I was 21 years old, I got married and to a wonderful girl in the United States. We moved to Israel. And at that point, I was looking for a job. We started a sock company. We made our own novelty socks, which didn't really take off very well. And before long, I was broke and needed to figure out a way to support my family. I figured that perhaps I can become a writer, because when I was in the 6th grade, I had a teacher who gave us a creative writing assignment, and he basically let everyone write whatever they wanted. At the end of the day, he collected the papers and he read mine, and he pulled me aside. He said, I don't really care if you fail math, if you fail science, if you fail biology. You just keep writing and I will make you pass your grades. So I'm pretty sure I didn't write anything that year, and I probably failed everything as well. But he gave me a certain confidence in myself to know that I had something when it came to writing. Having said that, so I'm married, I'm broke, and I'm looking for a way to support my family. So what I did was I reached out to a friend of mine who I hadn't met him for many years, and we met by chance somewhere. And I asked him and he was working for a certain Orthodox Jewish magazine in the United States. I asked him if he could help me get an in with the magazine. He made an introduction for me. I wrote an article for them. It took them literally a year to pay me. They didn't pay me for over a year. I was losing my mind. I realized I wasn't going to work with them. So I reached out to another magazine and they hired me. Thank God they pay on time. So, it's possible to work with them. And the name of this magazine is Ami Magazine. So once again, I'm living in Israel. I'm writing for them. I'm doing these local interviews in Israel, helping different people, share their stories. And one day, I took my wife on a vacation to Thailand. And while I was there, my editor sent me a message, and she said, I haven't heard from you in a while. What's up? So I said, we're on vacation. We're in Thailand. She says, why don't you write about it? So I hadn't really planned on writing anything, but I figured, what, if she wants an article from Thailand, why not? So I wrote the article and it got printed in the magazine, and people started writing letters into the magazine saying that they really enjoyed my travel and they wanted me to continue doing these travel pieces. So the rest is history. We pretty much, they started sending me on all these different assignments. The first assignment was to Mexico to see a community of Hasidic Jewish converts to Judaism. So you have like these real Mexican people who are converting to Hasidic Judaism. They're living in this little town outside of Mexico City that is so small that even Google doesn't know where it is. And we spent a fascinating 2 days with them. And then I was sent to Saudi Arabia and to Lebanon and to Afghanistan and to Iraq and to so many different exciting places all over the world. And that is what I'm going to share with you today. So,
so I'm going to let you continue talking. Well, I want you to take us, first of all, through the exotic places. We're really interested. But my first very important question is that it really, screams the question is, you look like a Hasidic Jew, you dress like a Hasidic Jew, you with the long payas and the whole garb and everything. You clearly keep kosher. How in heaven do you make it work? Are you ever scared? All these questions that just pop up, and obviously you'll go through with us a few countries, one country at a time. We're not going to cover all the countries you are in, but just how do you do it looking like you do?
So that's a very good question. First of all, I'm usually not scared. Occasionally I freak out if something gets to me. I'm very in tune with my instincts. So if my instincts tell me something is good, I will get closer to it. If my instincts tell me something is bad, I will further myself from it. And to give you just a point, I was at an event last week and I was talking and I told them this, and just the people were like very surprised. But I was literally once on the New York subway, and there was this guy who got onto the train at one of the stops. He was a tall guy with red hair and freckles and very thin guy. Something about him gave me this idea that he's dangerous. And I literally got off the train, let it go, and waited for the next stop. And then nothing happened. It's not like the train blew up or anything, but this guy was giving me bad energy. And I realized that my instincts told me to get off, and I got off. At the same time, there are people, complete strangers, who give me good energy, and places that give me good energy. And I'm very in tune with that. It doesn't really make logical sense, but I follow my instincts very closely. And I have a great story.
Yeah, tell us.
I have a great story about following instincts, which we'll get to soon. The next question was going to be about kosher, I'm assuming?
Yeah, kosher. How do you do it? I'm assuming not all the places you go have Chabad houses or kosher restaurant or steak houses, which are according to your standards. So, and I want to get into a few of the countries that we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, just a general question: how do you do kosher when you travel?
Sure. So the first thing is that I feel that people are willing to sacrifice for things that are important to them. So travel, to me, after religion and family, travel is my number one passion. And I'm willing to sacrifice by not eating so well while I'm traveling. Now, mind you, I weigh more than 250 pounds. So believe me, I'm not starving. And even when I'm traveling, I'm eating pretty well. I bring a lot of food with me. There's a lot of salami, a lot of beef jerky, or biltong, as you would say. Is that a South African thing?
I think it's a South African, but we're pretty well versed with biltong. It's okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
And no, it's all right.
There's a lot of.
We're two different countries, and we do have different accents. I know Americans don't think so, but we do actually.
No, I've been to South Africa. I can differentiate between the South African accent and the Australian accent. The Australian and the New Zealand accent is more hard for me to differentiate, but I'm pretty sure I'd be able to get that as well. And there's a lot of tuna, canned tuna. There's a lot of vegetables that I pick up in local markets, and there's a lot of licorice. I call myself a licorice connoisseur. I always have licorice with me. I especially love in America what they call Australian licorice. I'm not sure if the Australians have ever heard of it.
Yes.
Oh, you have? Because American Chinese food is not real Chinese food. So I was thinking maybe the American Australian licorice is not the real Australian licorice, but maybe it is. I don't know. Anyhow, so I love licorice, and I've eaten licorice for dinner on many occasions. The last question I think you were asking was what about how do I do it dressed like a Hasidic Jew? And the answer is that in most places, I'm comfortable walking around as a Hasidic Jew. There are places such as Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, and Afghanistan where I was not able to do that yet. Afghanistan is not going to be doable anytime soon, unfortunately. Lebanon either, but Saudi Arabia, I think I'll be able to walk around openly as a Hasidic Jew over there very soon. And in some places, such as the UAE or Qatar or Bahrain or Egypt, I've sort of tested the waters. Like I'll walk out looking Jewish for like 5 minutes and see how it goes. And in most of these places, I didn't have a problem, so I just continued for the duration of the trip. I even walked around looking like a Hasidic Jew in Iraqi Kurdistan, and that was a great experience.
Amazing. We're looking forward to hearing some of your experiences. I'm going to start with I'm very curious about Afghanistan. I know it's a very unfortunately topical issue at the moment, and our hearts and minds and prayers go out for the people of Afghanistan. But I believe you found the last Jew in Afghanistan. Apparently before that, there were 2 last Jews in Afghanistan, and they weren't even talking to each other and until one of them passed away. Is that right?
Yeah, so you know that they say there's a famous saying that goes, 2 Jews, 1,000 opinions. So there were these 2 Jews living in Afghanistan. The last 2 Jews left. Unfortunately, they didn't get along. They were both living in the synagogue. One was on the top floor and one was on the bottom floor. And the one who lived on the bottom floor didn't let the one who lived on the top floor use the stairs to get to the top floor. So he had to take a ladder and go through the window from the outside of the building so as not to trespass on the property of the person living downstairs. Anyhow,
how did
these
you
guys
find him? How did you
we'll get to that in a minute, but these guys were, when the Taliban came to power, they were both thrown in prison for being Jewish, and they fought and bickered so much that the Taliban kicked them out of prison. And I was actually in Afghanistan a couple of weeks ago for the second time to meet the last Jew who lives there. And I asked him about this anecdote with the Taliban kicking him out of prison, and he flatly denies it. But if I know him correctly, and I'm pretty sure I'm the person who knows him best in the entire world, it's absolutely true. It totally makes sense. Anyhow, so I was looking for this guy for a long time. His name is Zvulun Simantov. And I eventually got in contact with a fixer in Kabul who told me that he'd be able to connect me with Mr. Simantov. It wasn't very complicated to get a visa. Like I went to the Afghan embassy in the consulate in the United States in New York. I walked in. I wasn't dressed Jewish that day specifically because I wanted to get a visa. And I basically asked them to give me a tourist visa. Within 2 hours, I was out of there with the visa in my hand. And that night, I was already on a plane to India from where I would fly to Afghanistan. That was in September of 2019, so almost 2 years ago. It was a fascinating journey. Landed in Afghanistan, no issues with customs or anything. Obviously, again, I wasn't dressed Jewish. As soon as I got to the city, I met with my fixer who bought me local clothing so I could fit in. I actually have this little beard going on, and they, like, I had local Afghanis coming up to me and talking to me in Dari, which is a dialect of Persian, because they basically told me that I fit in so well, they thought I was a local, which I thought was nice. And we went to visit this
war-torn country. Sorry,
Yes,
is it very war-torn, or is it
very,
does it
very
have
war.
some beauty to it? Or does it have any beauty to it too?
So Afghanistan has a lot of beauty to it, and it's also war-torn. And you know, I find that some of the most beautiful places on earth are some of the most complicated places on earth. Afghanistan really has a lot of natural beauty. It has also like such an abundance of beautiful produce, fruits and vegetables that are so beautiful and so delicious. Like I always tell people, like I would go back to Afghanistan just to eat the fruits again. Hopefully that will be a possibility soon. We'll see what happens. But we met with Zvulun Simantov, who is the last Jew. He is a complicated, stubborn man, but he has like this hard shell, and once you crack the shell and you get inside, it's filled with this mushy, gooey, very warm guy if you get inside, but it's hard to get in. The second you sit down with him, it's like right away he's like he won't even talk to you until you give him $200. Like he won't open his mouth. You can sit down across from him, he doesn't care, and he knows he's going to get it, and he gets it every time.
Why is he still there?
So that's a great question. He's very adamant that Jewish history in Afghanistan should continue. Jewish history has been in Afghanistan. I mean, Jews have been there for 2,000 years, and he doesn't want to see the light of Judaism leave the country. So there's also the synagogue and cemeteries, which he looks after. And he's what can I tell you? He's stubborn. He has children living in Israel, and he's just there. He doesn't want to leave. Now, while I was there, I noticed that his tefillin, his phylacteries were not kosher anymore. He had like one of the straps was torn and held together with a safety pin. And I figured that, if he's putting on tefillin every day, he should be putting on kosher tefillin. So when I got back to the United States, I made a little campaign and we raised some money. We bought him a pair of tefillin. Then we had this, an embroidery company in Brooklyn, in Crown Heights, a Lubavitch company actually. They made him a custom-made tefillin bag that looked like the flag of Afghanistan. And we put his tefillin in there. A friend of mine volunteered to go to Afghanistan to drop them off, and he paid his own ticket. So this guy literally flew there to drop them off by him. We gave him the tefillin. He was so excited, and this we made a video about it that's currently on YouTube. It actually picked up a lot of steam now in the past few days because Afghanistan is in the news. We also gave him a lot of kosher food because he doesn't have any there. He does slaughter his own chickens in the kosher way, but there's a lot of other products that he's missing. So we thought we'd make it easier. We brought him a lot of food. And then that was 2 years ago. A couple of weeks ago, well, actually in March of 2021, he announced that he's going to be leaving Afghanistan. So and the last time I was there in 2019, he had told me that he was going to stay until he died. So I wanted to go over there and talk to him about why he was leaving and what's going on. Did he need any help leaving? So I was actually there in June. I haven't announced this yet publicly. I was there in June, and we spent a lot of time together. We brought him I went with two friends. We brought him 5 massive boxes of food. Like he's gonna have kosher food for months. And we visited the cemetery with him. It was a fascinating trip. And I'm actually currently in touch with him at the moment. Right now, when Rebbetzin Groner asked me to come, we said that we wouldn't be able to talk about him, but there was a 3-day rescue operation going on, which I literally didn't sleep at night because all day I was working with different governments and activists to try to get him out of Afghanistan. There were many different crazy plans that were hatched, and we had some ex-CIA people involved and the Mossad. It was really crazy. And so by day I was busy with all of this, and then by night I was busy putting out fires in the media because I'm the last known person to have met with him. So everywhere, like I'm literally getting, as we're speaking right now, I'm getting messages from different TV stations in Israel and radio stations and different news agencies, and they all want to do an interview with him. And I was saying, listen, guys, it's irresponsible. We're not allowed to talk about this guy because if we call any attention to his name, then God forbid the Taliban can come pay him a visit. He was supposed to leave yesterday, and to our great surprise, he has decided to stay, which boggles my mind. I haven't spoken to him about this personally yet, but I'm going to be calling him as soon as I get off this Zoom call. I'm going to try to figure out why he's made this decision. But I will repeat, he is a very stubborn man.
I can imagine if he doesn't want to leave now after all these efforts, I can imagine it's very, very stubborn. Shloime, I believe you found some kosher food in Afghanistan in the supermarket. Is that true?
Yes, so I have this hobby that wherever I go, I try to find kosher food. So I'll go into an international supermarket and see what kind of kosher food we can find. I will say that the selection in Afghanistan wasn't great, but I got some cough candies, which I could actually use right now, a little bit under the weather. We found some lemon juice and mayonnaise and some ketchup, a couple of products with kosher certification. Although in Saudi Arabia, I did like a deep dive on this, and I found kosher bread and smoked salmon and so many different products. There's going to be a video about that on my YouTube channel as well. Like I do in every exotic country I go to, I make this video called "Shopping for Kosher Food in Afghanistan," "Shopping for Kosher Food in Saudi Arabia." So those are going to be on the channel as well. The shopping for kosher food in Afghanistan is already on the channel, and the other ones will be up there shortly.
Amazing. Do you want to share some photos with us now or a bit later when we finish the talk? Well, we will take questions at the end as well. So just do you have a few photos of Afghanistan for now before we move on to another exotic country?
Okay, so first of all, how do we share? Oh, share screen.
Yeah, you can share screen.
Okay. Did you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is Mr. Simon.
Yes.
Okay, so this is Mr. Simantov. Him and I are praying together at the synagogue in
want to open it? Do you want to click on it to open it?
Is it not open?
No, it's just a whole lot of photos. We can see a folder, or you can see a tiny photo, but maybe if you click on it, it will open up.
So I did open it up. I'm not sure why it's not showing you this. On my screen, it's totally, oh, okay. So you know what, I now I understand, okay.
Oh, there we go. My 11-year-old was giving me instructions how to instruct you how to do it. Okay. Oh, wow. This is the two, it's on again.
Okay, so now we're gonna do another one.
Young.
Just 1 second, 1 second. Let's get back into it. It's actually the first time I'm doing a screen share. There we go. So he's about, do you see that?
Yeah.
So this is him in the cemetery in Afghanistan, the Jewish cemetery. He's about 62 years old, maybe. He might be dyeing his hair, I'm not sure. Let's see.
We see a photo of the tefillin bag.
A photo? Ooh, I don't even know if I have. I can definitely find one. Do you see these guys with the guns?
Oh, we can still see Simantov in the cemetery.
Okay, so let's go back to them. Okay, this is a little confusing. I'm not sure why it's like this, but let's get back to. How about now? Do you see the guys with the guns?
Yes.
Okay, so these are my security guards that I hired. Notice how careless they are with waving their weapons around in the car.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is.
If anyone goes on YouTube, they can see on Shloime's channel, you can see the tefillin bag. It's a beautiful tefillin bag. What is he? Is that all the kosher food you gave him? Gosh, you do look like an Afghani.
Yeah, this is about, I'd say 10% of what we brought him. Yeah, this is on the most recent trip just a few weeks ago. Let's see, what else we got?
Let's one more fun. Let's move on to another exotic country.
Sure. Here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
This is me on top of a tank in Panjshir Valley, which is currently, I'm taking a selfie. That's the only place in Afghanistan which is not currently under Taliban rule, because it's almost impenetrable from the mountains. The Soviets never took it and the Taliban never took it, and they say they will never take it. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Now, another, of course, burning question is Saudi Arabia. It sounds absolutely. I presume you travel to question. I mean, I've watched to countries. I've watched you travel to countries outside of the Middle East, but for some reason, the Middle East, which Jews are not normally known to be traveling, is more intriguing than others. Saudi Arabia, how did you get in? How did any tourists get in? How did you as an Orthodox Jew, as an Orthodox Jew get in? And what was your experience there? I know you've met a few friends there. One in particular, share with us.
Sure. So Saudi Arabia actually traditionally has been closed to everyone. You can't, it's not a country you can get into unless you're a Muslim and you're going to Mecca, which any Muslim can go. So technically, if I wanted to, I could have gotten a paper that says I'm a Muslim and gone, but I don't feel that's the right way to go about it. So in 2018, in December of 2018, they decided to open up tourism for the first time on a trial basis, just to see if the locals and tourists could jive together. So they issued they agreed to issue up to 1,000 tourist visas, and they had a massive electric racing car event in Riyadh, which is the capital city. I was lucky to receive one of those visas, and one of those 1,000 visas, and it was an interesting process because when you're applying for the visa, they ask you what religion you are, and there were these little boxes you could tick, and Jewish religion just wasn't one of them. So you had the Muslim box, there was the Christian box, there was the Hindu box, there was no box for Jews. I did notice a box that says non-Muslim, which I guess could be for atheists or for Jewish people. So I clicked the non-Muslim box, the visa got approved. I thought, wow, this is so cool. So then I wasn't sure about actually, like, first I was like, there's no way they're gonna give me a visa. So I may as well, let me just try. But then I got the visa, so I guess I might have to travel there. So it was interesting. I sent an email to the Saudi government and I said, hi guys, my name is Shloime and this Jewish guy, and I just got approved for one of your visas. And I'm wondering if you mind if I come into your country, because traditionally you haven't really been so interested in Jewish people visiting. And within 5 minutes, an email came back and said, all people of all religions are welcome. Enjoy your trip. So I was like, wow, this is great. So I thought, whoever's at the computer there in Saudi Arabia, let me send them another email really quickly. And I said, hi guys, traditionally you have not allowed religious artifacts that are non-Muslim artifacts into Saudi Arabia. So the Israeli shekel is illegal, tefillin are illegal, any Jewish books are illegal, any Christian books are illegal, crosses are illegal, everything's illegal. I said, I'm not just Jewish, I'm actually a very religious Jew. And in order to travel to Saudi Arabia, I need to bring all the stuff with me, not the crosses, obviously, but tefillin. And I said, is it okay if I bring this stuff? And within a few minutes, another email came back and it said, all people of all religions are welcome and may your prayers be blessed. So I was like, okay, this is great. So I flew to Turkey from Israel. And while I was in Turkey, something happened, which doesn't usually happen. My instincts told me not to go to Saudi Arabia. I'm literally sitting in the airport, about to board my flight to Saudi Arabia, and something tells me that something is going to go very wrong. And I took out my phone. I went to a website where I can book flight tickets, and I decided to book myself a flight back to Israel. Something told me that this wasn't going to go right. It was, just for your information, this was like 2 months after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, who was that Saudi journalist who was butchered in the Saudi consulate or embassy in Istanbul. And I just had the feeling that I was going to be Khashoggi #2. And I wasn't really into it. So I decided to basically go home. At the last minute, I sent a text off to my rabbi and I said, Rabbi, I had mentioned to him earlier that I was going to Saudi Arabia. He was fine with it. I said, Rabbi, I'm feeling this incredible fear, something I've never had in the past, and I think I'm coming home. What do you think I should do? So he usually doesn't respond so quickly, and he was also within a couple of minutes, he responded and he said, listen, if there's no reason to fear at all, he said, if your wife agrees to you going and she gives you her blessing, you're going to be safe. So that was it. I got on the flight. I went to Saudi Arabia. The entire flight, I sat under a blanket. I was saying psalms, saying Tehillim the entire time, praying for my safety. I remember getting out of the plane when we arrived in Riyadh, and there was no jetway into the airport. It was just like, you go down the stairs onto the tarmac, and then you get into a bus, and from there to the airport. The second I got out of the plane, I was hit with this cool, refreshing wind. And I remember thinking, I thought this place is supposed to be hot. And just that alone helped me realize that there are so many surprises out there in the world that you might not be expecting, but the world is full of interesting surprises, and we try to just go with them. So we got into Saudi Arabia, went straight to I took an Uber to my hotel. Yeah, they have Uber there. And do you guys have Uber in Australia?
We do. But not a third world country or even a second world country. We have
right,
Uber.
But there are many places where Uber has become illegal and whatever.
Yeah, it did come here later than it did in America or anywhere else, probably.
Okay, so I got to Saudi Arabia, take an Uber to the hotel. You get into the hotel. There's one of the laws is that there has to be a photo of the founding king, and then the current king and the crown prince in the hotel. So like every hotel lobby has these photos. It's just interesting to see. Obviously, I wasn't dressed Jewish. Got into my hotel room. In the United States, every hotel room has a Bible in the room. There they have a Quran. There's also a prayer mat in the closet, and there's a arrow on the ceiling which points to Mecca, so the Muslims can know which direction to pray in. And I thought that was a really cool idea. Like imagine every hotel room in Israel had a little arrow pointing to the Kotel, so you know which direction to pray to. Anyway, the next day, well, immediately upon arriving, after checking into the hotel, I went to the supermarket and started looking for kosher food. I started filming that episode, which unfortunately is not on YouTube yet, but it will be soon. The next day, I went to see some different sites in Riyadh. The next day was a Friday, actually. So I was going to be in Saudi Arabia for Shabbos all alone. And right before Shabbos, I went to the supermarket to get a couple last minute things. It's interesting because I needed wine for Kiddush on Shabbos, and alcohol is illegal in Saudi Arabia. So I realized that I was not going to be able to bring that in with me. Then I thought about bringing grape juice, but there's a chemist that actually told me that grape juice, if it's even heated by accident or if it gets to a certain temperature, it can become alcoholic on its own. And so I was thinking, imagine I got these bottles of grape juice and somehow on the plane, they went through this process. We land in Saudi Arabia. As soon as you get into the country, literally as soon as you land, there's a checkpoint where all your bags have to get scanned. And it's not like in every country you go through customs and they sometimes pull you aside and make your bags go through. Every single bag goes through immediately, first thing after the plane. So when I landed, actually, they put all my bags through. Everything was fine. And the last bag to go through, they pulled me aside and said, sir, please open this bag. Of course, what was inside? My tefillin. So there's this woman in a burqa. She's completely covered from head to toe. All you can see are her eyes. And she says, sir, please open the bag. So I open the bag. I take out my tefillin. She says, what is this? I said, oh, I'm a religious Jew and I need these to pray. So she said, okay, can you take them out? So we take them out. I show her the straps and the boxes. One goes on my arm, one goes on my head. And she says, so what do you do with this? I explained, well, I put one on my arm and one on my head. And she says, and then what do you do? I said, then I pray. So she said, how does it work? I said, it's just something that connects me to God. It's not like electrical or anything. It's made out of leather. So she says, okay, is there any other special technology I should know about? I said, man, this is not special technology, but I don't really have anything else I don't think that you need to know about. She said, okay, listen, I've never seen this before. Let me call my supervisor. At that point, I was terrified because, again, there was this whole Khashoggi thing, and she was calling a supervisor. I realized this was going to be a big deal. And there must have been fear on my face because after she called the supervisor, she said to me, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And I could see from behind the veil that she was smiling, like her eyes curled up like that. And it really gave me it really calmed me down. So supervisor shows up. It's like a 15-year-old kid and a little short guy. And he takes one look and he doesn't know what it is. So he has to call his supervisor. So we wait for the next supervisor, the next guy, literally. In Saudi Arabia, they have giants. There are people there who are literally giants. This guy must have been 7 feet tall, gigantic guy, 400 pounds, shaven bald, like a monster. And you wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley or anywhere else for that matter, not an airport in Saudi Arabia either. And this guy comes up and says, what is the problem, sir? And the woman there with the burqa shows him my tefillin. He stops for a second and he gave me a massive smile. He knew exactly what it was. He says, welcome to Saudi Arabia. So anyway, there was no problem. Got in. Anyway, so we're back at the hotel. It's Friday. I don't have grape juice because I was afraid that if the grape juice turns alcoholic, I would go to jail. So I figured we're not going to do that. My plan was to go to the grocery and buy grapes and then stomp them out until we had grape juice. But I realized it would be very time consuming and very messy and very smelly. And I just decided against that. So I reached out to the rabbi and asked him if there's anything, any ideas he had for me, how I could make kiddush. You could technically make kiddush on challah, on bread. It's not ideal, but if you're stuck and you have no other options, you can do that. So he recommended, according to halacha, to Jewish law, you can make kiddush on something that is considered an honorable drink in the country that you're in. So, for example, in Britain, well, I don't know about kiddush, but in Britain, people make havdalah after Shabbos on tea. So he recommended that I go to the supermarket and try to find something that's considered an honorable drink. Turns out that in Saudi Arabia, they have these non-alcoholic beers. So they taste and look like beer. They feel like beer, but there's no alcohol. So they have all the big brands, Heineken and Budweiser. So I got a couple non-alcoholic beers and the rabbi said I can make kiddush on that. Anyhow, I'm in the grocery store right before Shabbos and it's about a mile or two away from my hotel. And I did not realize this was a very important detail that I probably should have known, but didn't. It for some reason just didn't come to mind. The Muslims pray 5 times a day, and when they pray, in most countries, no one's forcing you to go pray. You can do whatever you want. In Saudi Arabia, no one's forcing you to pray either. But at the time of prayer, as soon as the call to prayer goes off, you know that sound. Everything closes. If you're in a coffee shop, the doors are locked. If you're in, you stay in. If you're out, you stay out. You're not allowed to start shopping or start going out to eat when they're praying. This law was actually repealed 2 weeks ago. But anyway, when I was there, it was still in effect. So all of a sudden, the call to prayer goes off, and I am stuck in the supermarket 2 miles away from my hotel right before Shabbos. And it was like the longest prayer of the day. So I'm literally like in big trouble because the door, these shutters go down. Everyone who's in is in, everyone who's out is out. The cashiers all walk away from their desks, and I'm stuck. I have this huge cart of food, and it looks like I'm going to be spending Shabbos in the supermarket. So I'm like praying in my head silently, and eventually, thank God, the prayer ended, and I ran to the cashier, got checked
Your
out.
prayer or their prayer?
My prayers never end, but their prayer ended. And I remember, like, I went to the cashier. There was this huge line, and I was like, I didn't want to be impolite, but I also needed to like get out of there as soon as possible. I'm not sure if I skipped the line or stayed in the line. Eventually, I got to pay, and then my credit card declined. It was a lot of fun. Eventually, I got into an Uber, made it back to the hotel right before Shabbos. I remember calling my parents to wish them good Shabbos, and they're like, so Shloime, what are you up to? Where are you this week? I said, just, just local, not doing much. And I didn't want to tell them because they'd be terrified. So Shabbos comes, I light my candles, and all of a sudden there's silence. I'm alone in the hotel room, and it's time for me to daven mincha, to pray the afternoon prayer. And all of a sudden, I'm hit with this intense sadness. I was completely alone. My wife is over 1,000 miles away. My children are over 1,000 miles away. There's no synagogue. There's no friends. There's no wine. There's no hot food. It's just me alone in a hotel room. And I'm a pretty happy guy, but sadness was creeping in. And then I was hit with this most amazing thought. I realized that if up in heaven there's a map of the world and God is watching the status of Shabbos in every country in the world. So if I was in New York, for example, I'd be praying in a synagogue with 500 other people. And if I wasn't singing along, I don't think anyone would notice because the Shabbos in New York is shining very bright. But in Saudi Arabia, I'm the only Jew in the country. So the status of Shabbos in Saudi Arabia literally is on me. It relies on me. I make it or break it. And I realized that it wouldn't make sense for me to sit and mope and cry in my hotel room. So and this thought literally blew my mind. I just all of a sudden became happy. And I davened mincha, I prayed the afternoon prayer, and then I sang the Kabbalat Shabbat, and then I prayed Mariv, the evening prayer, and I made Kiddush, and I ate, and I sang, and I danced, and I went through the entire book of all the songs that we sing on Shabbos. And there's some songs that even when I'm home, I don't sing these songs, but over there I was like, listen, this is on me. Shabbos in Saudi Arabia I'm making it, I'm doing it. So I sang every song. There were some songs that I didn't know tunes for, so I made up my own tunes. I literally sat there and sang and danced and bounced off the walls until 4:00 in the morning, all alone in my hotel room. And it was one of the best Shabbosim of my entire life.
That's really beautiful, Sean. That made me very emotional. That's really very special. I don't think many of us get an opportunity to be the only Jew in a country. So that's really, really special. Shloime, just tell us a bit about your friend. You seem to meet and make friends everywhere. You open your heart, you learn from the culture, you learn from the people, and in turn, you teach them so much about being Jewish and you know, who you are and what you stand for. And just to clarify, a question came up. Just to clarify, usually Jewish women are if they're in the home, they light the Shabbat candles. But if you're a man on your own, wherever you are, the obligation is for candles to be lit. Usually it's the woman that lights it. However, if you're a man traveling on your own, it's the man that lights the candles. So just to clarify, because somebody put it on the chat and asked, I want to hear about your friend Muhammad Saud. You seem to make friends everywhere, and the most really exotic friends, interesting friends. And you almost what fascinates me is that you're so clearly proud of who you are and what you stand for. And they seem to respect you for that because you make no apology. And you have friends of all different cultures and all countries of the world. Tell us about Muhammad Saud a little bit. Is he from the family of the Saud family of the kings of Saudi Arabia, or is it just a common last name?
So that's a great question. First of all, I try very hard to be a friendly person. I don't have to try too hard because I'm naturally friendly. I'm actually very introverted, so it's not my natural
Really?
state. Yeah, I don't really like walk up to anybody and introduce myself. And it's interesting because at this point I've gotten like, I don't like to use the word famous, but a little bit well known. And like I was in synagogue a couple months ago, and someone who knew my brother-in-law walked up to me and said hi, and we talked a little bit. And then later I heard from my brother-in-law that this person had met me and he thought I was so unfriendly. And I was like, what? I thought I was so nice to him. But turns out that he mistook my shyness and introvertedness for me being unfriendly. So I'm trying to do better with that, but I'm not the kind of person who introduces myself to others. It's very difficult for me to talk to strangers. but there's something that I feel is so important for people to get to know people who are different than them. Because if we're all the same thing, then this world would be a very, very boring, drabby, one-colored place. But when we have different people from different backgrounds who can get together and share experiences and get to know each other, it's just a beautiful thing. So I try to make friends all over the world. Mohammed Saud is an interesting story. I actually met him on Twitter a couple of months after I left Saudi Arabia for the first time. And he invited me to come visit his home. He's a Saudi gentleman. He's about 30 years old. He taught himself Hebrew and he taught himself many Jewish songs. And he was like filming himself singing like Hava Nagila and puts it on the internet. He's very funny guy. Like it's just entertaining to watch. Anyhow, so
1 second, you mean you actually know these a real person that do it rather than these YouTube videos going around from WhatsApp to WhatsApp? He's a real person. You're
he's
saying
a very real person, and like I was in his house. We spent a lot of time together. It's also interesting. I share this all the time as well, is that if we think about it, what happened to Mohammed Saud? Why did this Saudi Arabian guy decide to publicly declare his love for Israel and the Jewish people at a time when his country, the country he comes from, has zero relation, at least publicly, with Israel and the Jewish people? And he's like out there risking his life doing this. Why would he do something like that? And this is something he shared with me, which was fascinating. But it turns out that like many other students from Saudi Arabia and Dubai and the Gulf, he studied at a university in the United States. And while he was in the United States, he had some medical issues, ended up in the hospital, and he felt very alone. And there was one person who came to help him. It was one of his professors who brought him food to the hospital, took care of any of his needs. And this professor happened to be Jewish. His whole life, he had been taught to hate Jews. But when this professor went above and beyond to help him, and the professor didn't know that he was going to turn into an international peace activist, the professor just treated him like a human being, who just cared for him like that. And this literally changed his life. So it's just very important to remember that wherever you go, you're going to be interacting with people who are different than you, and you never know how one tiny interaction, or maybe this wasn't so tiny, the professor must have spent a lot of time in the hospital, but you never know how this can impact somebody's life. And now this Mohammed Saud has inspired millions of people. Anyhow, so Mohammed Saud and we make friends on Twitter. Eventually we move it over to WhatsApp. He invites me to his home. I accept the invitation, fly down to Saudi Arabia for one day just to meet him. And I went to his house. It was interesting because I wanted, like, for the photos for the magazine and for my video purposes, I wanted to be dressed like a Hasidic Jew. So basically I got up in the morning in Saudi Arabia. I had arrived at night, stayed in a hotel. In the morning I checked out of the hotel, dressed like a Hasidic Jew, but I just threw the Arab headgear on top. So I'm like wearing this long suit, my payas are under the headgear, and I took an Uber over to his house. Second I got to his house, I took it off, and I'm dressed like a Hasidic Jew. So we spent some time together. We sang some Jewish songs together. He bought a bunch of kosher snacks that he found, and we had some fruit. And we had this beautiful day together. We just talked about our vision for peace and how we want the world to become a better place. And then we filmed this video. It went online, went viral. The Israeli government took the video, put it on their Facebook page, and it was like everywhere, millions of views. And the next thing you know, I'm on Al Jazeera being attacked by the Qataris, because there's like this political thing going on between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and anything that Qatar can use to hurt Saudi Arabia, they will do. So it's interesting because they're like, can you imagine one Arab country bashing another Arab country for allowing a Hasidic Jew in? I think that's so beautiful. Like the fact that, how do you hurt Saudi Arabia these days? How do you bash them? By showing that they allowed this Hasidic Jewish guy to come. I think it's great. The world's really moving in the right direction. So that's Mohammed Saud. It's not his real name. His real name is Mohammed, but not Saud. He has a different last name. He uses the name Saud because it's the name of the king of the royal family, and he doesn't want people to be able to show up at his house and harass him or endanger him. So he doesn't want people to know what his actual name is. So he goes by the name Saud, and people are afraid of him. Like he came to Israel at one point. The Israeli government invited him, and he met Bibi Netanyahu, and then he got back to Saudi Arabia. And like when he walks on the street, everyone just like runs away because they're like, if this guy meets with heads of state, like no one wants to get on his bad side. He's really a friendly guy.
That's really, really fascinating. We're so short in time. I have so, you have so
So we
many
can go a little
fascinating
over. If you want,
stories.
we can go a little overtime. Don't worry.
Okay, no worries, because you have so many fascinating stories. I want to, and if anybody has questions, please feel free to send them through. I want to move away from the Middle East just for one moment, even though we'll come back to a few exotic places. You visited, I was just so fascinated by this. You visited Kentucky, the General Electric Company,
Yeah.
because what was that about? They make Shabbos ovens with a Shabbos mode. So what was that?
So that
Why would
was
they
very
do
interesting.
that?
It's funny because they like one day, literally, I was just sitting there minding my own business, and I got a call from the magazine, and they said, "Can you go to Kentucky?" And I said, "Sure. I've never been to Kentucky. I'd love to go to Kentucky." And they're like, "Yeah, can you go in the morning?" And it was like 2 a.m. and I had to be on a flight at like 7 o'clock. So I said, "Okay, I guess." And they basically booked me a flight. It was a whole long story. The flight got delayed, whatever. Anyway, I got to Kentucky and they set up this meeting for me with the CEO of GE, General Electric Appliances. And before you know it, I'm in this massive manufacturing facility in Louisville, Kentucky. And I meet this guy who has partnered up with a couple of Hasidic rabbis to make technology that works for Shabbos. So they have these ovens with a Shabbos mode and refrigerators with a Shabbos mode. And they sat me down with all these like computer scientists and fascinating people who are working all day just to develop this technology to help religious Jews keep Shabbos better. And I asked the CEO,
Why
like,
did they do? What's their motive?
yeah, what is the motive, and does this make financial sense? And he basically said something so beautiful. He said, to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense financially. We were investing more money than this will bring in, but the idea is that GE is a company that is here to make the lives of our customers better. And if we have a significant community that needs help with something that's going to help enhance their lives, and we're here to do it. And I mean, it just blew my mind, but this is what he said.
Very heartwarming, really, very beautiful. One of our listeners want to know how you ended up in Lebanon and what was your experience? And did you go to the synagogue in Lebanon?
So I went to 5 synagogues in Lebanon, but well, yeah, let's talk about Lebanon. Sure. So Lebanon was it was an interesting trip. I was there for 36 hours. I was exploring the internet one day, looking for exciting places to go. And I came across something that insinuated that there's a Jewish community in Lebanon. Now, I had never thought that there were Jews in Lebanon. So I looked into it. And it turns out there is a bit of a community. It's not an organized community, meaning that they don't have any operating synagogues or community functions, but there are people, Jewish people, who are still living there. It was very hard, but eventually I was able to get in touch with one of these Jews. And I told them I wanted to come to Lebanon. They're very afraid of being identified as Jewish and associated with Israel. So I realized that this was going to be a complicated trip. I was in Israel at the time. I tried to book a ticket to Lebanon, and I couldn't even book a ticket because obviously they're on their direct flights unless they're on a F-16 bombing Hezbollah, which happens pretty much every day. But it's hard to get a ticket to those flights. So anyway, I tried to book a ticket, and Middle East Airways, which is the Lebanese national airline, they actually block IP addresses coming from Israel. So I couldn't even visit their site. Couldn't even visit their website to buy a ticket. So I had to reach out to a friend in Europe who booked the ticket for me. I flew to Turkey and from there to Lebanon. Like the fear of being identified as Jewish was so frightening that I had to literally cut off any tag or any semblance of Judaism from anything. So I had like clothing that I bought in Israel with Hebrew on the clothing tags, snipped it off the night before I went on my trip. My wife and I went through all my luggage. We took all the kosher food out of its packaging, everything. So there shouldn't be any semblance of Judaism left. The only thing that I couldn't change was the fact that I had my tefillin and my siddur. So we took that along, hoping for the best. Went to Turkey, got on the plane to Lebanon. When I landed in Lebanon, I was put into this huge long line with hundreds of other people. It was really hot in the airport. I'm sweating buckets. I'm terrified. I still have a voice note somewhere on my phone where I sent to my friend. I'm like, this is my bank account number. These are my credit cards. Listen, if something goes wrong, you're going to cancel all the stuff and make sure that my wife is taken care of. And I couldn't send this message to my wife because she would freak out. So I'm standing in line. It's boiling. I felt like a lamb, like a sheep among the wolves. I was so terrified, so scared. And I get to the counter where the border control officer is sitting there, and I hand him my passport. It says, "Good morning, sir. Is this your first time in Lebanon?" I said, "Yes, it is." It's okay. Yeah, let me see your passport. He opens the passport. I literally have the most Jewish name in the world. My name is Shloime Zionce. And to make matters like the worst, you got the Zion is right in there, Zion. So I'm terrified, literally like shivering in my pants. And the guy takes a look at my passport, takes a look at my passport picture, looks back at me, and he pauses and says, "1 minute, sir." And then he calls over two soldiers standing at the side. And now I know I'm in trouble. Like this is the end. So he says something to them in Arabic, and I can't even tell you what my heart is doing. It's like beating out of my chest. And they're talking back and forth. And then eventually, like after a minute or two, the soldiers walk away. And I turned to the border guard and I said, "Sir, what was that?" And he said, "Oh, it's interesting because we were all in military academy together, and you look like one of the guys we were with there. So I wanted to see if my friends thought the same." So it's like, okay, breathe a sigh of relief.
So now you look Arabic too.
Yeah, I get that. It's weird. I get that a lot, and I don't have any Middle Eastern ancestry as far as I know. Maybe thousands of years ago. But so he stamped me in. I went into the country. I had a taxi waiting for me. Went straight to the airport. It's interesting because so I went straight to the hotel. It's interesting because the hotel I was staying in was actually on the port of Beirut. So, exactly a year ago, it's on August 4th, there was this massive explosion where this warehouse blew up in Beirut, and the hotel I was staying in was completely destroyed. So had I been there then, I wouldn't be talking to you today. And I have a selfie that I took of myself from the balcony of my hotel with the Beirut port in the background, and the warehouse that blew up is right there in the picture. I literally was right there. And another thing I find interesting is that when you travel to these places, you make connections with people and you have experiences on these streets. Then when something happens, it's not far away from me. My heart, part of me, a part of me is in Lebanon, a part of me is in Afghanistan, a part of me is in Saudi Arabia. And I can empathize with the people, and it really brings the whole world together when you have this going on. So like for the past 3 days, all I've been thinking about is Afghanistan. I was just there, and I have friends there, and we're trying to get them out. And yeah, that's an interesting lesson. So when I got to Lebanon, I had to go to. My goal was to visit a couple different synagogues, and I was successful in doing so. The hardest synagogue to get access to was the Beirut synagogue. It's called Magen Avraham. It was bombed by the Israelis, actually, which is kind of crazy because there were Palestinian jihadists hiding inside. And like, it's just like, it's the kind of things that can happen in the war. Oh my goodness. Jews bombing a Jewish synagogue because they're terrorists. And so it was nuts. Anyway, so they rebuilt the synagogue, and it was a whole story, but I met this Jewish guy living in Lebanon. He was terrified to meet me, but he agreed to take me to the synagogue. There's another town about an hour away from Beirut. It's called Saida, or in the Torah refers to it as Sidon. And actually, two of Jacob's sons are buried there. So, Yisachar and Zevulun are buried there. I was actually at their gravesite. Anyhow, there's a synagogue there that's apparently close to or over 1,000 years old, and it's in the old Jewish quarter of Saida. Now, how does one find the old Jewish quarter? So there are no maps. If you currently look at a map of Lebanon, or you're looking on Google Maps, you can't just search these things. They don't show up. I found the map that was about 200 years old, and there I was able to find the location of the synagogue. I overlaid it with Google Maps, and this took a lot of time. But what I did was I basically looked at the port of Beirut, where the docks were, and I was able to see the formation from the sky. It matched up, the Google Maps matched up with the old map that was 200 years old. And then I moved to the right into the city, identifying street by street until I figured out where the synagogue should be. So I get to the city, I walk into the old city, I have a more or less an idea of where it is. I know the neighborhood was once called Harat al-Yahud, which means the street of the Jews. But there's also, since most of the Jews left Lebanon, they renamed the neighborhood Harat al-Quds, which is the Palestinian way of saying, the Arab way of saying Jerusalem. So I get into this neighborhood and I see this guy sitting on a chair smoking cigarettes, and I said to him, "Where is Harat al-Yahud?" And he pointed to a certain building, and then I immediately realized this was the synagogue building. Now, just for your information, there was a Syrian refugee family that had moved into the building in the 1980s, and they still live there. So I walked up to the building, I knocked on the door, and there's silence. About a minute later, the door opens. There's a teenage girl standing there, all decked out in the burqa. And I said, "Hi, I'm here I'd like to see the synagogue." And she slammed the door in my face. So naturally, I did what anyone else would do, and I knocked again. And she opened the door again. I explained to her that I'd come from far and I wanted to get inside the synagogue. And once again, she closed the door on me. So I knocked again. This time I had money in my hands, and I was going to offer her money to let me in, but she just opened the door, left it open, and walked back into the house. So I figured that was my invitation in. Walked into the place. There were two women sitting there. There were about 6 babies on the floor on blankets, and the women were smoking nargila, shisha as they call it. And there was still visible, there was a skylight in the building which had Stars of David in it, which are still there, even though the building has been empty for almost 40 years. There was the place where the Torah Ark once stood. There's this niche in the wall. There was a massive TV in the wall, and the family was watching a speech from Hassan Nasrallah, who is the terrorist leader of Hezbollah, on TV while I was there. And I just came in, I prayed a little bit, and I waved goodbye and walked out. So that was quite an interesting experience.
You learned some new languages along the way.
I'm sorry?
Have you learned some new languages along the way?
I learned a lot of bad words in Russian, and
it's always the first words we all pick up.
Yeah, and a couple words in Arabic, a little bit of Spanish. I really do want to learn Arabic. I feel like that would help me a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like you will, because you travel so often. What's happening now with COVID? Can you travel?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, most of the world is open. In COVID,
Australia.
Sorry?
Except
No,
Australia
is taking this very, very seriously, and you know, if that's what they decide to do. You know, I respect their decision. I feel bad for anyone who's in lockdown, because I've done this too. I was in lockdown in Israel for 7 months because we live in Israel, and after 7 months, I told my wife we need to get out of here, and we literally just got on a plane, came to the United States. It was becoming bad for my mental health, and I mean, we're almost in 2 weeks. It's going to be a year since I left Israel. I'm still paying rent there, but I haven't gone back because I just can't do it again. Cannot do it. So
but you're
traveling. Sorry?
Traveling around, but you're traveling around the world.
Oh yeah, I mean, since COVID started, I've been to the UAE, to Dubai 3 times. I was in Guatemala, I was in Colombia, I was in Iraq twice, I was in all over the United States and Canada, and I was in Afghanistan again. Yeah, it's not stopping me. I had COVID. I had the actual COVID. It was great.
Well, I'm glad you're better. Shloime, we could listen to you all night. I want to hear about the last shtetl in the world, but I presume you have to get on with your day. And unless you have a few more minutes to tell us about the shtetl, if anyone wants to watch Shloime on YouTube, subscribe. You have kept me going through lockdown because I absolutely love watching your channels. They're just fascinating. All the stories that you have with you showed about with the Peter guy, the YouTuber about a Jewish a Shabbat table and writing the Sefer Torah, just all these fascinating, really educational videos. I guess it's not, it's for Jews, but as well as for the world at large, which is absolutely incredible. Good work. It was just
Thank you. So
amazing.
yeah, I mean, just yesterday we celebrated a milestone. We reached 30,000 subscribers on my channel, which is very exciting. I'm hoping to get to 100,000 before 2022, which is not going to be easy, but I have this thing. I think I'm going to do a subscriber fundraiser. So I'm going to ask all my subscribers, if everybody introduced my channel to 2 other people, we'd get there, no problem. So this shouldn't be so difficult. Anyhow, I did some work with a non-Jewish YouTuber. His name is Peter Santanello. Fascinating guy. It's a whole crazy story how it happened, but basically I reached out to him and offered him an inside view inside the Hasidic world in New York, and he was very excited about it. He came, filmed a video, and immediately got over 1 million views. And from there, things just took off. We filmed 15 episodes together. They were not made for the Jewish community, actually. They were made for the non-Jewish community. It happens to be that a couple 100,000 Jews watched them as well. But we're at this point, we're at like, I think around 30 million views in total between YouTube and Facebook. And it was a fascinating experience. It touched the lives of so many people. And we're getting emails from people who started keeping Shabbat because of this, people who started putting on tefillin because of this. We have people who want to convert because of this. We had a non-Jewish family who became Noahites because of this. So a lot of interesting feedback. And yeah, let's do a couple more minutes. We did I traveled to a place in Azerbaijan called Kuba. Well, the big city is called Kuba. Outside Kuba, there's a little town called Krasnaya Sloboda, which means the Red Village in Russian. And there's this Jewish town that's been continuously inhabited by Jews for hundreds of years. It's the last all-Jewish town in the world outside of the United States or Israel. And they say it's the last shtetl, it's the last place where Jews have been living continuously in Europe or Central Asia since before World War II. Fascinating place with fascinating people. I saw people who have been it was very interesting. We had people who didn't have any Jewish education because they grew up under communism. They can't read Hebrew, and they come to synagogue 3 times a day, every single day, no matter what. They won't miss it for anything. They sit in the synagogue, they play on their phones, and they read newspapers, but they show up for minyan no matter what. And it's just like one of the things I've learned is that Jewish people throughout the centuries, throughout history, have sacrificed so much, so much to keep the tradition alive. And today it's easier than ever. I don't know if you have this in Australia, but in the United States, we have something called Uber Eats. You can literally, right? You have that too?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's crazy, right? Like my grandparents would go buy a chicken and take it to the shochet to have it slaughtered, and then they'd have to clean the chicken and cook it. I can sit on the couch in my underwear, and 20 minutes, I will have a glatt kosher burger and fries delivered to my house. It's never been easy. Yeah, so people have sacrificed so much. Today in 2021, it's so easy to do something to increase your Judaism, and it's just great. Thank God there's so many beautiful technologies that make our lives easier. And any questions?
I have just one, of course, very important question. I'm assuming you meet Chabad everywhere you go, and I think you call yourself a little Chabadnik. Any good Chabad stories we can end up with? A good Chabad story, or any, yeah.
So first of all, I have many great stories that have happened to me throughout my travel. I spent so many Shabbosim with Chabad, and I really do love Chabad. I consider myself a shliach, a messenger of the Rebbe. I don't have a fixed location, but I'm just roving around,
Worldwide Chabad
wherever
House.
they call me. Yeah, that's where I am. I
Roving
hope.
Chabad House.
Yeah, my dream is to speak at the Shluchim conference. I've informed them of this, and they said they're going to consider it. I think I have some very interesting messages to share. Anyhow, I want to share with you a Chabad-esque story. So there's this place in the United States called Area 51, and it's a secret Air Force base in the Nevada desert, where the United States tests missile, rocket technology, new planes, etc. This is where they develop the weapons of the future, meaning if 30 or 40 years ago you had seen something flying around in the Nevada desert that was flying informations that didn't seem possible, and you would say, that's interesting, that must be a UFO. Turns out it was probably a drone, but we didn't know about drone technology yet, but back then it was being developed. So anyhow, there's this place called Area 51. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about it because there's always different things getting tested there that regular people who are not, don't have an inside view of what's going on in the military can't understand. And there's a fascination with this place. They say that there have been UFOs that have landed there, flying saucers are being kept there, aliens. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but a couple of years ago, in the summer of 2019, there was this internet craze where people in the United States decided that they were going to storm the army base. They're going to storm Area 51. It started off as a joke, but before long, 2 million people joined this Facebook group that they're all going to storm Area 51. So I figured, listen, if they're doing this, I better go check it out. So I flew to Las Vegas, got into a Jeep, and started driving towards Area 51. It's about 2 hours through the desert. There's no cell phone service. And there are all these different stops with which the conspiracy theorists have along the way. So first you reach they call it the extraterrestrial highway. And even like the US government put up a funny sign with flying saucers, like they're kind of playing along with the whole joke. So you drive down this highway and then they have the Alien Research Center, which is like this huge gift shop. They have shot glasses and socks and puppets and 50 different books about aliens and license plates, magnets, everything you can think of. They're like alien flavored beef jerky and like it never ends. So went to this place, and then there's this place called the little black mailbox, which is a mailbox on the side of this road, and supposedly the aliens come there to pick up their mail. So people, and who I later figured out are lunatics, literally go there and drop off things for the aliens to take. So I show up at this mailbox, open the mailbox. First of all, there was like an ounce of marijuana sitting right there. Okay, I guess they wanted the aliens to try it. Like that's expensive. I could have sold it for good money, but anyway, I didn't touch it. There was a burger from McDonald's, literally a fresh burger. It looked like it was steaming 2 minutes ago. And there was this, so the burger's in this little paper bag with fries, and some idiot wrote on the bag, "Dear aliens, food from Earth, enjoy." Okay, and people were dropping off letters there. I mean, people take this so seriously. And then I was like just standing there in total shock and awe. I'm taking pictures and videos of this mailbox and whatever's inside it and going through it. And then this van pulls up and this old hippie gets out. This guy's a long white beard and long curly hair, no shoes. He was with a couple of friends, and he started telling me about this time that he once spoke badly of the government. And then that night there were F-16s flying over his house, and he had seen Bigfoot and Sasquatch. And he was going on and on and on about all the interesting things, the Loch Ness Monster. He was like, this guy, I don't know what he was smoking, but I want some. So this guy was so full of energy. And I just realized everyone around me is insane. And what am I doing here? And I felt so bad because I'm like, I didn't learn any Torah that day, and I didn't daven with a minyan, and I'm just spending time with all these lunatics. I felt really bad about it. And in Hasidic Judaism, we have this idea that nothing ever happens for no reason. Everything happens because there's something there. And my instincts told me to continue on this highway, even though if I was a normal good Jew, I probably should have turned around and gone to a synagogue and learned some Talmud. Something told me to continue on this journey. So the last stop on this trail is this little motel. It's called the Little Alien. Get it? And it's this tiny motel, one floor. It has like 20 rooms. There's a flying saucer hanging from like a crane outside, and there's a little alien mascot standing outside with a sign that says "Welcome, Earthlings." And I show up at this hotel. This is the last place on the tour, and like it's not a tour, it's like last place on the trail. And then after this hotel, I'm gonna take some pictures, turn around, and go back to Las Vegas. So I get to this place and I'm walking around and I'm taking pictures, and all of a sudden someone walks up to me, elderly gentleman, and he says, "Sir, what is this place? What is this hotel?" And I said, "Oh, don't you know? Like, why else would you be in this area? Don't you know this is where Area 51 is, and this is where the aliens supposedly are, and people come from all over the world to see this." He had no idea. This was a guy driving from North Carolina to California on a summer road trip all alone. Turns out the guy tells me that he's Jewish and that his daughter is getting married in a couple of weeks in Paris. And he said, "It's so interesting. I never thought I'd meet a Jew here." And I said, "That's interesting. You know, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I meet you, you meet me, you approached me. How about you put on tefillin?" And he says, "No, I'm okay. I'm good." I said, "When was the last time you put on tefillin?" He said, "It's been about 25 years ago." I said, "Sir, what are the odds that you and I meet here? Let's do this. Let me take your Jewish blood pressure." So he says, "Okay, why not?" I go to my car, I put on tefillin, and at that moment, I understood why God had brought me to the little alien. I went on this entire mission not to meet Bigfoot or the Sasquatch or the aliens or the crazy hippies or to take the marijuana from the mailbox. I was there simply to meet this Jew. And it was such a beautiful experience, just knowing that everything happens for a reason. A Jew is never stuck. A Jew is never alone. A Jew never does something for no reason. Everything is connected from above. The whole world is connected. All people are connected. And it's time for us to open our eyes and our hearts and our minds to seeing that connection and to making the world a better place.
I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. I'll put in my word. I think you're a real Chabadnik. I'll put in my word for you. I would love to see you speak at the conference. That would be amazing.
Here's the plan. I literally wanna tell this story of the tefillin at Area 51 at the Kinnis. I know how they do it they have all these action shots and they're gonna fly down there. I have pictures and videos to document it. I wanna fly that guy. I'm still in touch with him. I wanna fly him in to be there with me. I think it's gonna be great. Please put in a good word if you can.
I definitely will. You are just amazing. We can listen to you all night. You have fantastic stories and your heart is so open. And I love the way you learn from other people. They learn from you. You're an incredible guy. There should be a world full of guys like you, and everyone can do their bit. And you just inspired us. I think it's just what we needed during lockdown. You're just incredible. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Please follow his YouTube channel and subscribe. Follow him on YouTube, Instagram, podcasts, everything. He has endless amount of stories and you'll be inspired. Have a good night, everybody. Good morning and have a good day to you, Shloime. Enjoy your day. I hope everything works out with the last year of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I hope so too. And once again, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to very soon, when all these lockdowns are over, I promise you, I'm going to come to Australia. We're all going to have a l'chaim together. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'll give you all the time in the world.
Thank you. Anybody has any question? I think the amount of countries you have covered over time, I think you said 40, right?
I just left my 42nd on Friday.
Thank you so much, Shloime. You're welcome to message Shloime. He's a great communicator and he'll get back to you if you have any questions. Have a good night, everyone, and have a great day, Shloime. And we're glad you're out of lockdown. We hope that will eventually happen to us too.
Yeah, I hope so too. Once again, I look forward to sharing a l'chaim with all of you once it's done.
Amen. We'll host you with pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All the best. Sei gesund. See you. Bye.